Dawah. And what we feel is that the Quran then actually ties you into the reality of that creator, because then he explains to you the nature of things, why you exist in the first place, why did Allah create you, what's your purpose of life, and what to expect after you die, basically. And that you find in the explanation in the Quran, basically. Do you guys have like a science background or anything like that? Or
we're both in that realm.
Because when I was talking about the infinite regress, I felt that you were nodding. I think maybe you've encountered that argument before or whatever, or is that true, or is that perhaps the first time you've heard it? Or okay, but does that make logical sense to you though, or would you have contentions with that argument of infinite regress, basically?
I've heard it before. I think it's a reasonable concept.
Right.
Not something. Yeah, I find reason in it for sure, but I'm not. Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah. And I think, to be fair, that's how I pose the argument as well.
Sure.
I don't say, look, that's empirical, analytical evidence that a God exists.
Right.
What I say to people is, look, it's a reasonable option to consider, and it's also reasonable to look at other options, like a material cause, and either accept it on the basis of a deductive argument, or rejecting it, right? And a material cause, for me, I would say subjectively, seems unplausible because of that problems of infinite regress. Because if it requires an explanation of its existence, you can't have an infinite series of explanations. And ultimately, even whether, in science, you may have obviously encountered a cyclic universe and everything else, but it all points to you still have to have a beginning. Because even the complete circuit of cyclic universe is dependent, because it requires hydrogen or helium or iron or whatever, all the components that are necessary for it to exist in the first place. And it's, of course, reliant upon laws, the laws of physics, right? Which function in a very mathematical, in a very predictable way, right? Ayaz, did you want to add anything? Have I?
No. So
Well, what do you feel about what I've said?
How do you feel?
I mean, feel relaxed. If you have a contention, it's a relaxed conversation. It's not about judging anybody. Or
I don't feel any contention. I'm honestly just willing to
Sure.
listen and hear. But one question I did have
Sure.
is something I find interesting, kind of being maybe in more of like a middle ground of faith and stuff like that, is it seems like to me there's a lot of commonalities and things like that. Do
Yes.
you feel, as someone who's, I'm assuming, a practicing Muslim,
Yes.
do you think there's people that would not consider themselves Muslim that are actually following the doctrine of your faith, or do you think there's really kind of a moment of conforming and stuff like that?
So I think there are a lot of people out there. Generally, I think people are good people.
Sure.
And I think the general consensus is that I think for most people, if you look at a global society rather than pockets, people believe in a higher power of some sort. It seems reasonable or plausible. And they lead very good lives, very moral lives. But you see, ultimately, for us as Muslims, the conforming to a particular system is important, because the one who is telling you to conform, we see as the creator of the heavens and the earth, who's created everything, including you and me. And so the very breath that we breathe, the very eyes that we see by, we feel that those are, and we're told that in fact, that those are blessings given to you by God Almighty. And in return, Allah expects you to worship Him alone and lead a good and a moral and a decent life, right? And so we feel that just as a father would have a right over his child to behave in a certain way or do things in a certain way, what about the rights of the Creator on you, who created everything, including your father, your mother, your children, and everything else? And so for us in the Quran, for example, in the 2nd chapter, Allah says that I created the human beings and the spirits, the jinn, for no other reason but to worship me. So it now tells you what you were created for. However, people sometimes misunderstand what worship is. So in Islam, me smiling at you is also a form of worship. It's a charity. It's a sadaqah. Why? Because now we learn, of course, that person who smiles at somebody, they actually have a release in their own brain, often making them smile, reducing their stress, and actually it makes relationships a lot more comfortable and nicer. People actually have a better well-being when they are happy and they see other people that are happy. Now, of course, in the 7th century, we might not have known that, but this is also seen as a charity. If I were to walk on the street and I saw a stone and I moved it out of the way because somebody might trip, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, this is a charity, you'll be rewarded for this. So this is also a form of worship. But for us, the ultimate form of worship is the prostration in our prayer, which we believe that all of the prophets did. So we believe from Adam to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, all of the prophets actually, we believe, prayed in that way. So it's interesting that in the Bible, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus, when he starts to pray to the Father, it says that he throws his face onto the ground and he worships his Lord. On the mountain, when Moses and his son goes to pray, they put their knees. In fact, before that, they say they wash themselves. They do ablution, which is what we do before we pray. Washing our faces, our arms, wiping our hair, and we'll wash our feet. And then it says that they put their knees and their hands and their faces onto the ground and they worship their Lord. The Muslim prayer is the same prayer, in fact. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught us to pray in exactly the same way. And this is what I was trying to say to you, that we don't feel Islam is a new religion, but just a completion of all of the messages, the messengers that they came down with, the message. And the Quran says, Allah says in the Quran, today I have perfected your religion for you and chosen Islam as your religion. So it's the perfection of the message that came throughout history, basically. So in that sense, we even though often you might find people that they will say, well, religions, they fight one another or they're always at battle. Look, we have our disagreements, there's no doubt about that. But there's a very high level of respect that's given to Moses, Jesus, and all of the other prophets that came before as well. And if you were to read some of the references to Jesus, for example, it really elevates him to a very high status, a very high level of respect. So it's not about disrespecting. And one of the reasons why we don't generally hang around in that part of the park and we're here is that we want to be respectful and we want to try to explain things in a nice way, because we feel that this is actually the best way to give the message of Islam to people in a calm, considerate and a well-mannered way, basically. And this is also part of our religion. So yeah. You were going to, I think, ask something as well, or? I talk a lot, but I do like it when people sort of come back as well. I have a bad habit of like going on and on, but do you have any question at all, or is there anything about Islam that you've perhaps seen or witnessed or heard that maybe, you thought, well, is this part of their religion, or what's going on there? Is there anything like that perhaps you've discovered or seen? You must have seen a lot of things, come on.
Can you explain the women being covered?
So in Islam, in the Quran, Allah says, tell the believing man to lower his gaze. So the first hijab or veil is placed on the man. Don't feast your eyes on women. And as a man, you know when a man is looking at a woman, automatically, some of the things that are perhaps going through his head, not necessarily very respectful. In fact, many of our thoughts, we would struggle to tell our mothers or our sisters or our daughters or our wives, because that's the nature of man. That's how we're wired, okay? So the first hijab, the first a sense of modesty is placed upon the man. And Allah links believing. In other words, if you are a true believer, lower your gaze. Don't gawp, don't stare, don't feast your eyes and think things that are inappropriate, basically. And tell the believing woman to dress modestly. So there's a responsibility placed upon both. Now, throughout all of human history, you find that women actually covered their hair. If you watch a video of England, even if a person was not particularly religious, they'd always have a scarf. That was just seen as modesty. It was seen as a modest way. It was the norm throughout all of human history. It's actually a very modern phenomena which has become fashionable because of pop culture and media and everything else, where actually now it's seen perfectly modest not to have your hair covered, and perhaps even dress in clothes that perhaps most of us wouldn't want our daughters to dress in. Let's put it that way, right? And it's seen perfectly okay. But in Islam, this responsibility is placed upon both the man and the woman. By the way, the man has modest dress as well. So he shouldn't wear very figure-hugging clothes. He shouldn't be showing his aura, which is from his navel to his knees. That should always remain covered, especially in public. So there are controls on both. But the woman's hair ultimately is seen as a very, let's say, it's a sign of beauty. That's why women spend many hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on hair treatments and things like, to make her hair look really, really nice, because it's a feature to attract people by. And in Islam, we say that a woman's value is not in the way she looks. It's not in her beauty, but in her taqwa, her closeness to God, and her etiquettes, her manners, her decorum, her intelligence, her capacity to reason and to do things. That is of value. The looks, the outwardly looks, are not what she should be judged by. But today, we basically have thrown that right over. A woman now is valued more on how she looks, and often can be more successful, even in the workplace, because of her beauty rather than her ability. And in Islam, we say that's wrong. It should be what's inside that matters. The substance, the very core of that individual, their values, not what's on the outside. And it's very difficult, you see, to have that as a principle and as a rule, if basically the women are dressed in a way, and I'm not just talking about the hair, of course, in a way that would clearly, let's say, not encourage men to treat that person with the respect and the dignity that they should be affording them. Now, I'm not saying that a woman deserves to be disrespected if she's not dressed appropriately. I'm not saying that, because in Islam that would be forbidden, because you're told to lower your gaze. You're not supposed to be looking at her in the first place anyway. But, we have a 6-second rule, right? We are told that a person will basically judge somebody within 6 or 8 seconds. What are they basing that on? Appearance, right? And we're told, no, don't do that. Now, one of the other reasons that we're given in the Quran, that so the woman will not be harassed. She will not be molested or harassed. Now, there are actually studies done where a woman dressed in